Thank you. That was gorgeous. Thank you. I was a hospice chaplain for over 20 years. Over the years, I got used to responses of folks when I told them what I did. Many people would look sad and despondent, asking me if this work was depressing. Others would tell me what a special person I was for doing this work. Well, no, actually. Neither of those descriptions fit my work and my sense of being within that work. Serving in hospice was for me a daily blessing that helped me focus on the most important things in my world. It was a daily lesson in mindfulness and hopefulness. Those of us who choose hospice work are reminded every day that life is precious and there is nothing more immediate than the right now. A daily reminder that beauty and grace are all around us, and we need to find a way to be in that beauty and that grace. For me, I learned that in order to find hope and joy in a 20-year hospice chaplaincy, I must be present to that which is happening around me, including the life and deaths of those people I cared for. My teachers, my mentors. This is truly a story of transformation. I was at the Cleveland Clinic Foundation as a chaplain, and I had just started my chaplaincy journey. I was doing a residency in clinical pastoral education, a year-long time, taking care of people who were very ill and dying. When you do a CPE, clinical pastoral education residency, they throw you in the deep end pretty quickly. So on my first night on call, I was the chaplain, the only chaplain in the hospital. 6 patients died that night. I was told by my supervisor that was a record. Trust me, that did not help. I realized very quickly that I did not have what was needed to give to those families that night. I had no tools, no experience, just me and these families. I often joke that by the 6th time, I sat next to the wife, tapped her on the shoulder, and said, "It'll be fine." I pray that I did not do that. During the next month, 31 of my patients died. It was a lot. And I found myself responding mechanically. And I realized that there was no time to grieve between deaths or between days. It was always happening. I was sucked into the bottomless pit of despair. I was new in this business of sickness and death, and I was losing hope fast, filled with a hopelessness. How do we Unitarian-Universalists find hope in hopelessness? How do we Unitarian-Universalists find joy in despair? Many of our Christian and Jewish siblings, and some UUs, take comfort and hope from the belief that a divine presence will guide us, protect us, and provide for us. So many are comforted by the words, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for the Lord is my shepherd." Many Unitarian Universalists do not take comfort in those words. We do not see a divine presence offering us the gift of peace and hope. Our help, our raising up from hopelessness must come from somewhere else. What vine on the shore of our faith can we use to pull us out of the muck of despair? Where do we look in times of hopelessness and helplessness? Especially in these days when we watch our democracy crumbling right before our very eyes, when we fear of the end of our world, our country as we know it. From what do we draw our strength when we must go forward with a difficult task that drains us of physical, spiritual, and mental energy? Even the task of watching the news can drain us of all of our hope. And today, as your chaplain, I strongly recommend that you don't watch the news. I don't. However, that twin sister who the children saw today and lives on the other side of a door in my house watches the news and runs over to tell me all the most horrible things that have happened since yesterday. But I have a spiritual practice. And as you will see, I will be encouraging you to have one of your own. When my sister does that, my spiritual practice is to tell her to stop it. I don't want to hear it. Thank you very much. Go home. So what is it that we look to transform us into joyful, hope-filled believers? For if we do not transform individually, it will be hard to transform any other thing in our lives, in our homes, in our communities, in our churches, and in the world. For I am a firm believer that Unitarian Universalists can change the world. For me, there is a gift, and it is the gift of the present, the right here, the here and now. The gift of really knowing that this moment and the call to live into it and into its fullness is what we are all called to do. I'm sure you've all heard, "Be here now." And I am saying that. This actually brings me comfort and peace, knowing that I have the moment I am in right now to live fully. To live in the right now. It is a spiritual practice. I know that I need to practice more. How many of us, including me this morning, go out to our cars to get in and start driving, and we're thinking about what we have to do next and what we left behind and what's going to greet us when we get to wherever we're going? And when we get there, we don't realize how we quite did it. We don't remember turning left. I can't believe I'm the only one in this room that has happened to. And it is frightening. Living in the right now is a spiritual discipline, a spiritual practice. Please hear the words, discipline and practice. And however you define spiritual, use that to lead you into your practice and your discipline. Let me tell you another story, or a story, about a man who got it, the concept of living in the moment. And it came at a great price for him. 45-year-old man, still quite handsome with a wry smile, a hospice patient, who could no longer speak because of his disease. So I entered his home as the chaplain to provide him whatever spiritual comfort I could. And he greeted me with that wry smile, and he wrote me a note telling me, I did not order a chaplain, and I'd rather not see you. Okay. Chaplaining can be very humbling. He told me he knew he had only a short time left, and he had things to do and friends to see. So he planned on using his time with his lifelong friends, some of whom were in the kitchen, anxious to hang out with him and drink some beer. Wow. With not much time left, this man was diligently practicing living in the moment. And he, along with so many of my patients, taught me that valuable lesson. This is something I learned over and over again from those beloved souls who I have cared for over the years. My friends, there is nothing more precious than the moment we are in right now. Nothing more valuable, nothing bigger or better. Right now, right here, in this place, with these people, with each other. Nothing in this world is more precious than the moment we have right now. Recognizing this and practicing it is a spiritual practice that will transform your lives and transform each one of you. It will give you the energy that comes not from eating the breakfast cookie that has all the sugar and calories in it and gets you moving in the morning. Not that kind of energy, but the energy that comes from the bottom of your feet and goes right through into your body, into your soul, and then comes out in joy and loving. A Unitarian-Universalist theology of hope. And we have roots that go back, that hold us, upon whose shoulders we rest. Our Universalist siblings of the 1700s, when they believed and taught that the good news was that all people were chosen by their loving God to be saved and live in eternal bliss. The mid-20th century Unitarian Universalists from all parts of the country professed publicly a theology of hope by standing with their African American siblings in defiance of segregation laws. Unitarian Universalists working for and believing in the right of all people to marry who they love and making that a public ministry. And today there are Unitarian Universalists all over this country who believe that their presence at the border and at the immigration jails will potentially save their souls, souls of our country, and the lives of many. I believe that these promises come from a deep faith, a transformational faith that is fed by our ability to sit and pay attention. So let me tell you about the title of my sermon, Sit, Naomi, and Pay Attention. Naomi was a therapy dog, a Wheaten Terrier. This should come as no surprise that this is about a dog. A Wheaten Terrier who was a therapy dog while I was a hospice chaplain. I trained her to within an inch of her life so that she could do this, and actually trained myself as well. She was the dog who, when we got off the elevator in a nursing home one day, I could hear the staff down the hall saying, "Oh, Naomi's here," because they could hear her tags. And when I got down to the station where they were all sitting and working hard, they were all smiles, and they took a breath, and they started to play with Naomi, and I said, "Bet you don't know my name." And their response was, "Oh, Reverend, it's okay. You don't even have to come with her. Just put her in a cab and we'll pay." So Naomi was the epitome of a well-trained therapy dog. She worked with patients in rehab who had strokes and would not work to try to get stronger, but they would work with Naomi. However, I could never get 100% of her attention. And I would work with her, and I would do what I was taught, point to my nose and say, "Naomi, pay attention. Naomi, pay attention." And one day, it occurred to me, she was. She was doing what I've encouraged you to do today. She was taking in the world around her. She had a doggy spiritual practice that I could learn from and hope I did. She would do whatever I asked her to, but she might not be looking at me because she would be looking out at you. And if she could talk, she would be able to tell me what each one of you is wearing, how you're responding to the sermon. Of course, she could not do that in our language, right? She never disobeyed me, but she would take time to look at the garden. She would take time to look at you. She was paying attention. One day I walked through my herb garden when I lived in Cleveland and got into my car on my way to the hospital and got half a block away when I realized that I had not looked at my herb garden, which was beloved to me. I had spent hours and hours and days upon days building this beautiful herb garden, and I would sit in it just to look at it and smell it. But I was so focused on something else that I did not take the time to be present in the right now, the right here. So I turned around and went home to the herb garden. I spent a minute or two. I apologized and got in my car and went to work. With this ability to pay attention, we are able to share the hope of Unitarian Universalism, the hope that Unitarian Universalism proclaims that can give us strength to be present in the world and each other, even in despair and especially in joy. How can we use embody a pay attention life? A life that shows by its living of faithfulness, taking notice of and pleasure in the fullness and glory of our present place and time, and celebrating it is truly an act of faith. In The Miracle of Mindfulness, Thich Nhat Hanh tells of watching a friend eat a tangerine. He said that his friend, Jim, began to talk about what they would do later. As he talked, he popped a piece of tangerine into his mouth, and before he had even begun to chew it, he had another piece ready to eat. Sound like anybody you know? It certainly sounds like me. Thich Nhat Hanh said that it was as if he hadn't been eating the tangerine at all. He said if he was eating anything, he was eating his future plans. I found that to be one of the most meaningful statements in my spiritual search for being here now, for paying attention. I have been struck by how easy it is to be wrapped up in what has to be done next, in thoughts of being late for yet another Zoom call, in list making, all to the exclusion of what's going on around me. I'm often sitting on my sofa, getting ready for a Zoom call, and not paying attention to Aldosh, who is an attention seeker, sitting here next to me and licking my face. And am I taking a minute to let her lick my face and to look into her deep and beautiful eyes? No, I'm doing this. Go away, go away. That's not paying attention. It feels unfaithful. If I want to claim a theology of hope based on mindfulness, the be here now idea, the paying attention, I fail miserably. What I believe is needed for each of us, especially me, but for each of us, is that devotion to, promise to, and practice of a spiritual discipline. A discipline that, again, reminds us of that which is so easy to forget. We are only promised the moment we have right now. We are only promised the moment we have right now. Not one of us knows what's next. The discipline to focus your full being on your life right now. I know you all have things to do when you leave here today. I know some of you are thinking, will she ever stop? I understand. But I beg of you, for your change, for your transformation, and for your ability to go out into the world and change it, transform it from your own, very own self, body, soul, and spirit. To look for that discipline, to find that one thing that will center you into being here now and into, as I always said to Naomi, touching my nose, pay attention. So, my friends, pay attention.